Up just like you did, Frank, about Kyrie. He didn't play the fourth quarter, neither did Jared Allen. 19 and 18 for him.
And remember, he's going up against Rudy Gobert.
Absolutely.
Recently signed a 5-year, $205 million contract. Jared Allen, by the way, his agent must be so happy. He's going to be a restricted free agent. How about that little pass, though, from Kyrie Irving? That is absolutely beautiful basketball. But I thought Jared Allen was a force. Once again, give the coaching staff, Steve Nash, Mike D'Antoni, Ime Udoka, Jock Vaughn, a lot of credit for switching the lineup up. They put Jared Allen in there. And for me, Chris, he needs to be the starting center. He runs the floor. He gets his hands on a lot of loose balls. He can defend. He's the guy that has to be out there. That was a major move that Steve Nash made tonight, and Jared Allen rewarded him. 8 of 9 shooting. I thought he was outstanding. 19 points, 18 rebounds, and like you said, sat the entire fourth quarter.
And after this play here, Frank, our Michael Grady, I had to give him some credit for this because I saw it on Twitter. He tweeted out this. And see, this is why Grady and I are friends. Yes Network Courtside capturing Jared Allen tonight. He's one of the Monstars from Space Jam. Very apropos out of our Michael Grady. And we're going to have more Jared Allen here to come. And, you know, I don't think it's any shock that with Amare Stoudemire also on this staff, that Jared Allen is playing the way he's playing this season.
Well, he also knows his game. He scores mostly close to the rim. And, again, he runs the floor. So look where he is right there. And remember, he's playing well. Thursday, Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. That'll be a big-time challenge for him.
And this is what Ian brought up during the game. He titled this The Fro versus the Frenchman. And we mentioned in the pregame show right before we went to the game, Frank, the last 4 times these two have met, it didn't really go well for Jared Allen. Rudy Gobert averaging 21.5 and 16.5, 75% shooting. And tonight, it was all Jared Allen all the time.
Sacre bleu, as they probably say, because Rudy Gobert got completely outplayed. And the funny thing was, during the pregame, we brought up that Shaquille O'Neal had gone after Rudy Gobert because he can't believe how much he makes. He said, I would dominate him. Guess what? Jared Allen was the one that dominated Rudy Gobert. That was a major part of the Nets winning this game. Again, changing the lineup around, I think, was really important. And give a guy like Joe Harris a lot of credit. He signed a big contract during the offseason. He's such a selfless player that when Steve Nash wants him on the bench, he's still going to be effective. But I think this lineup, they went with a more defensive lineup, and I think early on that was so important. That's what got the Nets going. And then Kyrie Irving playing like the Kyrie Irving that we know that he can play like. And, you know, Chris, if you go back to the last game, Kyrie Irving had a makeable three-pointer that he just didn't make. And then, of course, Kevin Durant got the rebound, missed a makeable shot. They could have won that game. Kyrie comes out right away, offensively, very aggressive, and it also translated on the defensive end of the court.
Speaking about getting going, as we segue from segment to segment here, Frank, very, very effortlessly, by the way, I might add.
It's all you.
Caris LeVert, 24 points over his last 3 games. 24 points tonight, 50% from the floor.
And to me, this was Caris LeVert from last season when he was, in my opinion, the MVP of the team, where early on he's getting into the lane and making those shots that he makes, not just relying on three-pointers, also setting guys up, being the playmaker. And that's why it's so important, the role that he has. Steve Nash has talked about it, where Caris LeVert is kind of like their Manu Ginobili. And they're going to need him because Kyrie Irving is not going to play all the time. And especially with Kevin Durant likely to miss the next 3 games, you need another playmaker out there. That's why Caris LeVert is so important. This was his best game of the season.
Don't waste all your Caris stuff now. We're still going to break him down a little bit later in the show. We've got so much more to come here to break this one down on the Nets post-game show. Stay with us here. We're going to take a look more on Caris LeVert as he bounces back, as Frank just mentioned. We'll head back down to Barclays Center. We'll welcome back in Ian Eagle, Sarah Kustok, get their final thoughts on tonight's huge win for Brooklyn. And also we'll hear the head coach, Steve Nash. Kyrie Irving set the tone for this Nets team tonight in their blowout win, a 34-point win over the Utah Jazz. And as you can see right there, he's been doing it all season long. 6 games with 25 or more points, 5 halves with 20 or more, and 3 games with 25 points, 5 or more rebounds, and 5 or more assists. That's tied for most in the NBA with 6 other players. But Kyrie wasn't the only net that sparkled tonight. Jared Allen was also in effect. And also Caris LeVert with KD out of the lineup, Frank. You would think Caris LeVert would just slide right into the starting lineup. But he goes to that Manu Ginobili role off the bench, and he flourished once again.
I think he's better suited off the bench when Kyrie Irving is going to start a game. And, you know, in the late in the third quarter of this game, he scored 14 points in about a 3-minute span. And he hits a three here, but a lot of his points were coming in the paint. Here he is going one-on-one, and he's so tough going to his left, a little step back. And remember, that looked like Caris LeVert from last season.
How many times have we talked about this, that we want to see him get involved with the mid-range and then start to get his game outwards towards the three-point?
And I think that's the way he played tonight, and he was just so effective, keeping his dribble alive, being the playmaker that you know he can be. And he had struggled coming into this game. This was his best game.
Absolutely. 24 points his last 3 games and 24 points tonight. We're going to head back down to Barclays Center and welcome in Ian Eagle and Sarah Kustok right now. They're going to break down one more final thought from this 34-point win over the Jazz.
Chris, right from the very start, you could tell the Nets had a completely different mindset. Steve Nash made big changes, and you don't know what's going to happen when there's that large an adjustment in the starting lineup. You're taking on a Utah Jazz team that knows exactly who they are. They've been a pretty consistent team throughout the last few years, and the Nets picked them apart. Both ends of the floor, everything that the Nets wanted to do, they did, and you saw it in the very first quarter.
Brooklyn came to work, and they set the tone on the defensive end. And for as much as we could start getting into the offensive numbers, because they are glowing, just the type of efficiency and unselfishness that was displayed, more of it came from the way in which they attacked Utah defensively. They got stops. They secured the defensive glass, which has consistently been an issue, and it was a sustained level of play. Because they got started early on, but we saw the same type of focus throughout.
And any group that entered the game, it worked. Even though that starting unit with Bruce Brown getting an opportunity, something that we didn't necessarily see coming. He had not been in the rotation. Prince and Green in the starting 5 as well. Jared Allen getting the nod, and Allen certainly responded. I don't know if it was a personal thing with Rudy Gobert. You never quite know what motivates a player, but Jared Allen, he was locked in and not intimidated in the least bit in dealing with one of the more potentially intimidating forces on the interior.
Former 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert, and Jared Allen was an absolute force. And you said it, he went at him.
He did.
He went at him offensively. He was showing off not just his ability to finish with some strong dunks, but also his footwork and the finesse game. On the offensive glass, he was tremendous in finishing up a lot of second chance opportunities. And once again, defensively, he was a wall. And he provided not only so much help at the rim, but also his movement in the rotations. And I think that's been a big aspect as we've talked about this Nets defense, areas to shore and clear up, is being positionally in the right spots to make sure different players are there to help. And Jared Allen was such a major factor in that, in the protection by the Nets in the paint that also allowed them to defend the three-point line.
Philadelphia coming up next on the schedule, a division rival. What are your early impressions of what you've seen from Doc Rivers' squad?
Well, I love what Doc Rivers and the 76ers look like thus far. And going into this season, the big aspect that I think a lot of people were anxious to see was the shooters that you have surrounding your stars of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, what Danny Green and Seth Curry would bring to the table. And it's been a whole lot of that. Tobias Harris is playing some excellent basketball under his former coach with the Clippers and now here with Philadelphia. So it's going to be a team that is going to come in ready. And, you know, for Brooklyn, this was a feel-good game for everyone. You said the balance top to bottom, but you are going to need the same type of effort and the same type of attention to detail, especially when you're playing a team like the 76ers.
They get it done without Kevin Durant as they knock off the Jazz in a demonstrative way here in Brooklyn. Back to you guys, Chris and Frank.
Ian, Sarah, thank you very much. We're going to step aside, take our next break here on the Brooklyn Nets post-game show. When we come back, we will hear from head coach Steve Nash. That's next, right here on Yes, Send It In, Fro.